Hello again. This little mini lesson is on in-text citations using APA formatting. Again, in-text citations, APA formatting. Before I show you how to do this in your paper, I want to talk a little bit about in-text citations versus the reference page. And a lot of times those words are used interchangeably, and I think that's correct. However, in our case today, let's look at in-text citations as what's actually in your paper. The reference page is that last page. So if we look at this example right here, an in-text citation would be, this looks like a paraphrase of something Sachs and Bermudez in 1996 said. So right here, this is an in-text citation. The reference example would be, it would look like this. This is the last page, okay? And again, I'm going to show you how to do this, but just as an example, when I'm talking about in-text citation, I'm talking about what is in your paper compared to the reference, okay? So let's talk about an in-text citation. First of all, are you citing a direct quote, or are you citing a paraphrase? And I know you've heard this in other lessons. We want to paraphrase as graduate students 95% of the time, but we have a few scenarios for direct quotations, okay? So for direct quotations, there are 3 different ways to cite specific types of quotations, and for paraphrase, there are only 2. And again, remember, paraphrase is what we're focusing on, and if you want another argument for paraphrasing more, understand it's very easy to cite a paraphrase. It's a little more difficult to cite a quotation. So let's take a look at the quotation scenarios real quick. The first one is a direct quote. Okay, if it's longer than 40 words, you have to indent the entire paragraph. So this right here would be what it looks like in the text. It looks like there's an indentation error here, but don't mind that. But if I've got a direct quote for greater than 40 words, what I do is pretend this is my text. I indent, I indent, I indent. There are no quotation marks, if you can notice that. And the period's kind of in a funny place, and your next paragraph would simply begin underneath here. But take a look at the components of a direct quotation. These are the same for all 3 scenarios. You need the author's name, comma, date, comma, page number. Okay, that's one distinction from a paraphrase, which we'll go over in a second. But these are the 3 components for every quote, direct quote. And remember, a lot of your papers are going through Safe Assign, and they're looking for, how many of your words match another writer's words. If you're using large direct quotes, you're going to get a poor score on Safe Assign. Probably not deserved because you're not plagiarizing, you're citing it properly. But again, to avoid that high number, another reason not to use direct quotes. All right, so another scenario for direct quote is the source author, is part of your sentence. So here's my direct quote, and here's my writing. In a dramatic turn, Moser stated, quote, "We no longer need intensive instruction for these students." Okay, so this is the year, the page number. Remember I said there are 3 components we need. We need the author, the year, the page number. There. And here's another one. Source author is not part of your sentence, so instead of introducing the quote, you just are giving the quote. We no longer need intensive instruction for these students. Now I need to put all 3 components within the parentheses. Author, comma, year, comma, page number, end of parentheses. And again, the period would go in a normal place. It's only when you have that large quote that the period actually goes before the parentheses. Okay, so again, quickly, you introduce it. It has 3 components, except for Moser is not in the parentheses because he's in your sentence. This one, you're not introducing the quote necessarily. You're just giving the direct quote. There we go. Paraphrase, very simple. 2 scenarios. The source author is part of your sentence. There are only 2 components in a paraphrase, author, year. So Moser, 2014, paraphrase, also believes, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so that's it. If I don't want to introduce the author in my sentence, I just need to put the author's name at the end. So here's the paraphrase, and there's the author's name at the end. And I threw this one in here for another quick little lesson here. This is when you have multiple authors who say the same thing, multiple resources. So you would simply put the author, the year, and then you separate it with a semicolon. Next author, semicolon. And when we have 2 authors in an in-text citation, this is what it looks like. You put the first name, however they put it. You don't put it in alphabetical order or anything, however they put it. You put their name, ampersand. That's not ampersand. Is that? I forget what that's called. The and, Miller, comma, 2011. Okay? So let's take a look real quick at the sample paper, and let's go over a couple of these examples real quick. This right here is a paraphrase, and I know, oops, there we go, make it bigger. I know this is a paraphrase because I have no page number. Here are 3 authors. So the writer simply made their paraphrase and gave credit to the original content to these people by doing this. Name, and name, year. So only 2 things that are needed. If we use these 3 people again, if we use these 3 people again under the heading of this title, somewhere in there, I only need to put Wersch et al. From there on out. See if we can find an example of that. Right here. That's all I need to do. I just need to put Wersch et al. If there are more than 3 authors, there are rules for 4 authors, 5 authors, 6 authors. That's something you want to look up in the blue book, okay, that APA manual I was talking to you about. Let's look at some more examples. Here's another paraphrase in text citation. Simply put the author's names and the year. Paraphrase, we already used them. Again, paraphrase. All right, a lot of people ask too, when do I have to keep putting their name over and over and over again? And if it's very obvious that you're paraphrasing a large section from Wersch et al., you wouldn't have to do that. But if you have a quick paraphrase and then you have maybe your own commentary and then you have their thoughts again, you need to keep putting their name. You need to keep giving credit. Here's the one we talked about earlier. Very simple. Put their name at the end. And again, these instructions are in the beloved sample paper. Here is an in-text citation with a direct quote. Okay, so we've got the direct quote, we put the author's name, page number, and then this is the difference, we put the year. This is a common question as well, is what do we do if we don't have the author's name? We just put the first couple words of the title of the work in parentheses. So that tells the reader that, okay, we don't have the author's name, so if they want to find this in the reference page, they're just going to look up psychological approaches, and there it is. So this does not have an author. Okay? All right, we'll talk about the reference page next.